Let's talk about Whoop today. You've seen the sleek band, you've heard the hype, but what if there's more to the story? We're going to get into that today. Hey, I'm Chris. Thanks for stopping by. And today we're going to get into kind of the first of a series of general long form content I hope to have. And since my channel's been getting a bit more views lately based on Whoop content, I wanted to kind of set the stage for what this discussion will be about today. First, let's talk about what Whoop is. If you're not really in the know on that, it is a performance-based wearable. It's like very performance focused. It has a subscription model and it's popular with elite athletes. I think if you've seen a Whoop band before and you start to look at different things, whether it's magazines or social media postings, you'll see a lot of the elite athletes, the LeBron Jameses, the Cristiano Ronaldo. I think he might actually even be financially invested in the company now. And ironically, he had his own set of like specific Whoop bands that are now not compatible on the Whoop, the newer Whoops, so the 5.0 range. But yeah, so it's used by the elite of the elite, Michael Phelps, a lot of these folks that are top tier athletes in their respective categories. So Whoop is previously was more of an elite kind of thought of like private club almost. So yeah, that's kind of some of the background on Whoop, but I want to set the stage for what we'll be discussing in this particular video. So one of the things we are going to talk about probably pretty heavily are some of the we're going to explore some of those controversies. We're also going to give some criticism and talk about some of the issues with Whoop, as it does have a very loyal fan base. Although it is like probably a small percentage, it is a vocal percentage. And I've been a part of some background on when I joined Whoop. That was in 2019, so that was with the 3.0. And this was a little bit after they went to the subscription model, which is an interesting model, but also one of the only reasons why I was even willing to give it a try. It was, I believe, $30 a month at the time. So that was I was like, previously to that, I had been kind of peeking around it for a couple years, and it was $500 one time, and you own the device. So gonna try to, I'll be looking up, I have some sections I'm going through because I do tend to ramble and things of that nature. So just to keep myself on topic, kind of trying to go through these things in a step-by-step way. So hopefully I'll be able to put some chapters on this. But yeah, so I think one of the first big things about Whoop that is very polarizing is their decision in 2018 to shift over to the business model they're using now, which is the subscription only model. So like I said, that's actually one of the reasons why I felt comfortable trying it out, so to speak, in 2019, was the fact that they offered that trial. But I absolutely understand that that also is a big con. I think we are in a subscription fatigue, I guess, like stage right now. Everywhere you look, somebody wants you to subscribe to something for a monthly fee, and then each time, at the end of the month, that money's getting pulled out of your account and you're like, wow, I really need another subscription based anything right now is not what you're thinking at all. So yeah, it's very interesting. The hardware is included generally, but it's locked behind that monthly fee. So there also is technically no free tier. You can sign up for trials underneath people's links, but I believe that only lasts for a month, and then you have to commit to the 12 months. So that's one of those things that's very different from an Apple Watch or a Garmin or a Fitbit or any of these other wearables. For the most part, they're not locked behind like any of these subscription models. The only ones I can really think of are the rings. Aura, I believe, is locked behind a subscription model. And I think there's certain features with some of the Google, who owns Fitbit, if I remember correctly now. Like there's some additional features you can get behind a paywall, but that's more of like add-ons. Like the basic fundamentals and data that they're giving you, I don't think that's locked behind any paywalls. So Whoop is very unique in that way. So I think that that can make the device seem inaccessible to some people and can seem exploitative over time. I like, you can argue whether that's a predatory business model. I would say I lean more toward it being predatory, but some of the things that I thought might make the subscription model work is the fact that if you're paying Whoop a subscription every month, I feel like that to me meant that it would light a fire underneath the company to innovate more quickly, to actually give users more value over time. If I buy something like an Apple Watch, I have the Apple Watch Ultra 2 in the black model. If I buy that, I buy that knowing here's the set of features that's applicable to it, and even if nothing was added to this, I'm accepting that, and I can deal with that based on what I already know it's capable of. So if it never improved on the software side, I'd be fine with that. I paid whatever the price of that was. I want to say it's around $800 now. I paid that, but I know this will last me a long time. Prior to this Apple Watch Ultra 2, I had a Series 4, and I'd used that literally up until I got this, which was, I want to say, a year ago. So it's a very different model. And when you stretch out the cost of some of the, let's go into 5.0, the price on that increased on the top tier. First of all, adding more tiers is adds a bit more complexity. So now everybody's like, what am I missing out on at these higher tiers? But let's just say you went highest tier possible. That's, I believe, now $359 a year. When you think about that compared to an Apple Watch that's $800, in less than 3 years, you already are about to be spending more money over time, which is kind of frustrating because, when the Whoop comes out with a new model, and we'll get into some of the bigger controversies down the line, there's one for sure that we will touch on, but it's just, it makes you really do more comparing when you start to think, oh, in 2.5 years, I could have owned an Apple Watch at that price point, and no, that's going to last me at least 5 to 6 years. So it's an interesting model that they chose, but I felt like that was going to force them to innovate quicker. They did add new features, but I want to say Whoop 4.0 was out for a number, maybe was it 3 or 4 years? Let me double check. Yes, that came out in 2021. So they introduced 5.0 in 2025. So in 4 years, I can really only remember 2 features from a software perspective that were what might be considered a game changer. There was the stress monitor, and then they coupled that with some of the breathing exercise, like the meditation exercises. If you know Dr. Andrew Huberman, they even had him, since he's big on these specific like physiological size, had him demonstrating those in the app. So you combine that stress monitor with the ability to do like specific meditations, either to increase alertness or to increase relaxation. So that was one of the bigger features. And I'm trying to think of what other feature it was. I feel like there was another one I might be missing out on. I know, like I said, I think that was kind of the biggest one. And then there was some battery increases. Oh, and then the health monitor. That was the other one. That was a suite of like 4 or 5 different vital metrics that kind of, and they pitched this as something that was also like helping detect some of the COVID stuff, and just based on if your health monitor was off, it was an indication that either you were sick or there might be something going on. And for some people, including myself at times, it was able to let you know a few days ahead of time when you were about to get some type of illness. So that was really interesting, and I thought that was a big game-changing feature for Whoop overall. So those are the 2 biggest things that added, along with a little bit of increased battery. So, but that's in 4 years. So I think they innovated a little slower than I expected. I was a part of a couple of their studies on blood pressure and some of the other studies, which I'm always interested in the studies. That is one thing I will say. I had done a lot of research on Whoop prior to joining in 2019, and there were a couple things that were holding me back from kind of really trying it out. One, the $500 one-time fee. I wasn't willing to do that for a number of reasons. The biggest one was they were not integrating any data with Apple Health or any other like Google Health or any type of like health software that's paired with the ecosystem you're using from like a smartphone perspective. So I had actually reached out to Whoop on Instagram and asked, hey, is there any plans to integrate with Apple Health? And they were like, no. It's essentially no. Which that is another theme about Whoop, though, I will say, is they take these hard stances on certain things. Apple Health seemed to be one of them. The biggest one probably is steps. They were very adamant about not counting steps and how that metric is not really helpful. And now I feel like they've introduced the steps beta, which was really inaccurate in the beginning, and they even had to put beta on it because of how inaccurate it was. But now it's even incorporated in the health span age, the steps and stuff. So they went from this is something we don't care about to backtracking on that and introducing it into a bunch of different metrics, which I think that's good to evolve and with as time goes on. But they've taken some of these hard stances, so it is interesting how that works. People think that it might also cause them to go back on the hard stance of no screens as a distraction on the wrist. So yeah, don't want to get off topic there though. So that's one thing. The business model, a lot of people think it's predatory based on that subscription base. And I think even now on the Whoop 5.0, I think they do allow you to do monthly on some of the plans, but I want to say the prices increased from $30 a month to $40 a month, which is just kind of ridiculous. So one of the other things that's a major deal is accuracy concerns. With a tracker that is pitching itself as a software basically company that, yeah, there's a little thing on your wrist, but that's not really what you're buying. You're buying the data. So if the data is not accurate and you can't trust it, that's a big deal. So I think for Whoop, they do a lot of these studies and they're always doing labs, even in person at their facilities in Boston, I believe. They do a lot of these studies and they do a lot of real world experimentation there. But if you've watched my last video on heart rate tracking, that's my biggest concern right now. And it's been a concern for a number of years. And once I heard that the heart rate tracking sensors were barely upgraded, if at all, that gave me some concern there. But yeah, so basically, especially during high intensity training, I feel like the heart rate tracking is not accurate. It's not accurate and it's disappointing. That's my impressions. So, and I felt that way about 4.0, and since I've got the 5.0, which I had it pretty much the first day you could get it, essentially, whenever I made that unboxing videos, as soon as I got it, and I've been utilizing it since, and I think the heart rate tracking leaves a lot to be desired. I've gotten some comments on some videos with folks telling how they were able to make the heart rate data customized to them and fit better, and I am going to be trying that, but straight out of the box, the heart rate tracking is not it for me. So that gives me some pause there. But I also think I am very impressed by the sleep analysis. It seems to be very good at tracking my sleep, when I go to sleep, when I actually fall to sleep, when I've gotten in bed. Like, it seems to be very good at that. So that's really cool. Because prior to Apple Watch Ultra 2, I didn't wear the Apple Watch to bed with any sleep tracking in mind, if I did. And the battery life was so bad, you had to basically charge it every night. So I will say the sleep tracking does seem to be good. And I will say another thing I think about Whoop is I'm not so caught up on the accuracy of every metric necessarily. I'm more interested in, let's just say what if all the numbers were wrong? At the end of the day, I'm just trying to see, is there any huge deviations from baseline? So if the number 50 is just a random number, but I'm always getting it normally, and today I've got 100, is that good or bad? Like, depending on what the metric is, it could be good or bad. But that's a key that something's going on. Something has changed drastically. So I think a lot of times, even with the new health span age, I think that is a game-changing feature to me because it's a gamification. Whether or not that's my real age, body age, it still gives me insightful feedback on ways I can improve regardless. So I think accuracy concerns, there's been blood oxygen, HRV readings, like sometimes it's all over the place for certain people, but I particularly think heart rate tracking seems to not be very accurate. And when it's a big factor, heart rate zones and zone training is a big factor into the whole health span age number that they have. I think you need to really be accurate with the heart rate tracking. So that does give me some long-term concerns. So accuracy concerns for sure. And then data transparency, and there's some like black boxing with the algorithms, right? So Whoop has some things like they have three big numbers, and they've done a redesign of the UI to even kind of let us know how big the numbers are. So it's like there is sleep, and then there is recovery and strain. So there's three big numbers that relate to that, like percentage wise. So the percentage of how well you slept, the percentage of recovery of your body overall, and then the strain number is just like a decimal pointed type number. So I think the highest is 20.9. So, those are three numbers, but some of the algorithms behind that are kind of black box. Like you don't really know they're proprietary. Like it's how, like they've kind of hinted on how they're calculated through some of the podcasts, and I listen to the podcast fairly often, but a lot of it still seems like a black box. It's not super easy to export data out of Whoop, and when data is basically the thing you're paying for, that's a big deal. Since it is more of like a software data company, it's a big deal if it's hard to get that data out to other places, and it's hard to do certain. That's one of the reasons why Apple Health integration was like a key thing for me. Even if the app disappeared someday, I would always have that data somewhere. But it's hard sometimes to export that, which is very interesting. Even some of the assessments I used to do, like there's a WPA and an MPA, like a monthly performance assessment and a weekly. That seems to have disappeared from the main app when the 5.0 came out. So, it's just there's some concerns with like data and stuff like that. So that's one of the things. And then some of the psychological impact, they have made some changes with it. Like there used to be an option, which there still might be, I've never used it, where you could turn off some of the metrics so you wouldn't see those. So if you wake up and you got shit sleep, like let's say you got like 3 hours or something, Whoop's not like, hey, you did a really bad job sleeping today, and you see a big red number and it looks awful, and now you're anxious throughout the rest of the day. Or, there's like that anxiety through optimization type of feel. So I know there was the ability to do that, but like when you're obsessed with sleep scores, sometimes that's not good. When you have a lot of anxiety because you had a low recovery, and now you're like, oh, I shouldn't be doing anything. Like, that's not always the best option. So, but I mean, I think you probably shouldn't just have a Whoop if that's a problem. I know when I've slept bad, and sometimes, it's just fun to see the validation of that. Another thing is, and I have worked in customer support pretty much my whole career, and I have a lot of experience in customer support. Whoop's customer support might be top 3 worst customer support I've ever dealt with. Like, some of the things that you think are so easy to get right, they get wrong. And especially when the 5.0 had all the issues, they started to, since their customer support unit was overwhelmed, they started to use AI. And then at one point their mailbox messed up and wasn't accepting replies. Like it was there, even before that. I've been on Whoop since 2019. It's been, 6 years. Anytime I reach out to support, it's like playing Russian roulette or something. It's just, you never know what you're gonna get, and oftentimes it's not good. I'll give you an example. I really liked the Sport Flex band that they introduced, I want to say last year. And there was, I'm following him on Instagram, and I'm following Will Ahmed, the CEO, and he's like laying out all this testing that they've been doing, and that's why it's taking so long, because they've been testing all these things, and he's going through the story of that. So I ordered this Sports Flex band. I think I ordered 2 of them, one in orange and one in black. So the black one gets there, I start wearing it. I probably wore it for maybe a week straight, and I swap out the bands. It's not like I'm wearing Sport Flex all day. So it's not like it was the only thing on. I don't do any crazy activities. I'm not doing Ironmans. I'm not doing any of the stuff that we used to do in the military, climbing under barbed wire. Like, I'm not doing any of that. I'm living a pretty sedentary life right now. I work from home remotely. So I'm not really bashing this thing around. Well, the old one. This is the 4.0. I'm not really doing a lot with this. But the band broke probably after using it for 2 weeks total. There's a piece on there that kind of like locks it in place. It's the only piece that's on the bottom that kind of ties it together. That little, I don't know if it's a metal, seems like a cheap kind of plastic, but that actually is a failure point. And once it fails, there's nothing you can do. So I reach out to support and I'm like, hey, I'm having this issue. And they're like, oh, okay. First they're running me through all these troubleshooting steps. I'm like, yeah, the piece is out. It's not able to be put back in. And they're like, okay, so do you want to switch it with a different band? And it's like, that Sportflex band, I want to say costs $60. All their other bands outside of the Luxe ones, which I never buy, are like $50 at best. So they're like, oh, we can trade it out for you. I'm like, yeah, so I bought two bands, two of the highest priced normal bands you have that aren't the premium Luxe ones, and you're going to give me a band of lesser value now. So that doesn't make sense. And yeah, they just didn't really care. They're like, all right, we'll ship you a different band. And I ended up choosing the Black Hydronet, which, great choice, by the way. This is, to me, probably their best band. I wash my hands a lot, take a shower. I leave the Whoop on as much as I can. So having a band that dries quickly is a game changer, but still costs less. So now I'm in the negative already, because you made a band that had a failure point, and you can find tons of people with the same type of issue with that specific band, which is crazy because I like that band. It was very comfortable. But yeah, so that's just one experience I have with customer support, but there's others where I'm just like, yeah, this is a bad customer support experience. So yeah, not great customer support, unfortunately, and that's a big deal. If you go on their Reddit, and I'm very aware, like I said, I worked in customer service for a long time, I know that the negative is always a more vocal, like they're always more vocal, especially online, than the positive. For every, oh, I love this thing and there's nothing wrong with it, there's like 10, here's a very specific issue, I'm angry about it, you should do better. Like, I get that. But like, I've seen a crazy amount of people having trouble just canceling memberships. There's a lot of documentation of other poor customer service. Like, they didn't even get my name right half the time when they're addressing me in the customer service fashion. They called me like Robert. Like, yeah, it's weird. It's just bad. Then there's like limitations on the refunds and return policy. Like, there's just a lot with Whoop from a customer service perspective that leaves a lot to be desired. And so, yeah, I think they can do a lot better in the customer support department, and switching to AI is still not as helpful. So I don't know. That's another feature though that they did introduce, now that I think about it, in the Whoop 4.0. It's like this AI coach, which it's okay. It's gotten better. I think it's still in beta right now, but it's in 3.0. So there's been a lot of changes, and it does seem to be smarter. It's a lot smarter, but that's as ChatGPT keeps getting smarter. Obviously, the model's going to get smarter. So that is really interesting, and you can ask it some specific things, and it, for the most part, works well. The AI coach within the app. And that can work in a lot of different facets. Sleep, exercise, all of it. So that's cool. Another thing that's interesting is some of the newer features on the 5.0 rollout are not, like, there's a lack of, it's interesting. So the blood pressure feature, if you watch this channel, I've been testing the blood pressure feature since I've got the new MG, which is one of the 5.0 variants that has a thing called blood pressure insights. I think it's a bit misleading to say it can track blood pressure, because it's giving a huge range, like it's a 20-point range on the systolic and a 10-point range on the diastolic, and then they select like basically the average in between the two numbers that they say. And it's also a thing that you have to first calibrate with a manual cuff. So if I go to the website and I see blood pressure insights, I'm not thinking I have to first calibrate it on some other thing. Look, I already have a Bluetooth manual blood pressure cuff because I did a study for Whoop and they were testing blood pressure stuff. So I have that already, but not everyone does. So I feel like it's interesting to mention that feature like it's built in and not mention that. I don't know. It's like the Apple Watch that they came out with ECG and they were like, first you got to go to your doctor, get an official one, and then it works from then on. Like, it's just, it's just a weird thing to me. And that's another new feature on the MG hardware exclusively is the EKG or ECG. And that's another one that to me is garbage right now. I've tried to take like 10 in different environments and different times at different things, and the results are always inconclusive. It only worked like the first time I tried it. And ever since then, I cannot seem to get it right. And I've been doing ECG for years now due to like the Apple implementation of it. So I don't know. It's not very good right now. So, it's I think if you're hoping that the blood pressure stuff will be something, it's also just a lack of medical approval too and regulatory oversight. So it's like they do mention the blood pressure feature is not medically approved or FDA approved. It shouldn't be used to make any real decisions. But my thing is, if that's the case, why include it? Just so you can say you introduced this feature and have a reason to make a 5.0 and charge more. That's what it seems like based on that fact. And I actually think they're pretty good at their predictions. If you go follow, I have a Notion live tracker. I do the blood pressure 3 times a day in the morning before eating and follow all the optimal steps to get that reading on the manual cuff. And then I put those data points into Whoop, and their predictions are actually pretty good. They've gotten, out of the last 6 days, I think they were right on the last 5. So I don't know. I think you are highlighting a feature that I think sounds like a game changer based on reading it. It's the first wearable I've heard to be able to do that via software. But also you're saying it's not FDA approved and you shouldn't use it for anything serious. So I don't know. It's a kind of a weird flip-flop to me. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, and has a lot of limitations if that's the case. So and some of the features are just not in every, like for example, the heart screener is a set of features related to ECG things, but part of that is also like irregular rhythm notifications, and I think high and low, I want to say, heart rate. But some of those features are not available in the United States. I think a lot of the features are available in some other countries, but it's just a little bit dicey in that way. So I don't know, there's a lot of confusion and ambiguity with some of the feature sets, so that's never good. And I don't know, it's just one of those things. I think if you're touting new features, I'd like them to be FDA approved. I'd like for you to say that they're more useful than just something to play around with, essentially, and then not to make any decisions off of it. But it is interesting. And then you're comparing. I think although they seem apples to oranges now because you buy the Apple Watch straight up and you own it, I think there's features that they're trying to clearly utilize that Apple already has, like ECG and things of that nature. But Apple has a lot of medically cleared features, like fall detection. Like they have all these features that are medically cleared, as opposed to what Whoop seems to do, which is like, hey, we're not allowed to say certain things about these features, but we think they're good. So I don't know. I think a lot of people right now are, I think honestly, Whoop is in its most controversial time right now. And I think the reason for that is probably the biggest controversy, which is why I saved it for last. Broken promises. And there was some that I mean, honestly, though, I think it starts before 5.0. Like, for instance, all the users who bought into Whoop when it was $500 for a one-time use, they called those founding members. And once they went to the subscription model, I remember the Reddit blowing up because that didn't carry over to the founding members. Basically, they still had to pay the subscription fee, and they're like, okay, I believed in you when no one else did outside of elite athletes. So what is, that was a broken promise right there. And then most recently, once the 3.0 came out and they broke the promise to the founding members, when the 4.0 came out, I remember watching the keynote of that, and they were saying from now on, basically, when you pay for the subscription, as long as you pay for a subscription, the hardware is free. When we come out with new updates, they'll ship out to you as soon as we can, basically, like on a first come, first serve basis. Because as soon as they put out the keynote and things are ready to upgrade, obviously there's an influx of users trying to upgrade as soon as possible. So, but they were basically saying you always can jump to the latest hardware as long as you're paying for a subscription. And they put that in writing on the website and their Whoop Locker, which is kind of where they include a bunch of articles and also, I think, podcast episodes. But they were proud of that. And when the 5.0 came out, yeah, that was not the case. During the keynote, and once they released the Whoop 5.0 and the MG, existing users, which I was one of, were informed that they either needed to extend their membership by 12 months to receive the free upgrade, so at least 12 months, basically pay for the whole year up front, or pay a one-time fee. It was $49 for the just regular 5.0 hardware and $79 for the MG models. That received a tremendous amount of righteous backlash. And in that process, they also removed that text from the website, removed that article, which is crazy. Once something's on the internet, it's on the internet. That sparked a bunch of articles from huge websites like The Verge and, other notable websites to say, like, things that are on the internet that are said, especially with how loyal the Whoop fan base is. Yeah, I don't know why they thought that would go over well. So after a while, there was enough backlash to where once the criticism got to the level where there were articles being written about it, they made changes to the policy. And it was just crazy because since the price also increased, even people that had paid for the 12 months like last month, that was no longer 12 months for them. Because now that you went from about $239 at the high end with only one tier of membership to $360 at the high end now, they basically had to not prorate, maybe prorate's the right word. It just didn't match up. So let's say 12 months became 9 months, and then you were screwed out of the upgrade for free. So basically they went back on their word, got called out on it, and then tried to I don't know, make it better, but I think the damage was already done. The reputational hit that caused, I listen to their CEO, the Whoop CEO, Will Ahmed, all the time. I just don't think that he couldn't have accounted for that. I think he was the one who had to say something to make that decision. And I can't believe that he wouldn't have accounted for the fact that the backlash would be severe on it. There were a number of things that were already controversial with just unveiling the 5.0. One of the bigger ones is this is 7% smaller. And I can feel it a little bit on the wrist, but not in a big enough way to feel like making it 7% smaller wasn't just to have more accessories have to be purchased, which leads to more cash for Whoop. I'll put it that way. I think the battery life gains are great. But I think being that the sensors are seemingly the same, I don't know. I think if you polled all the users and you said, hey, we can make this 7% smaller and you'll have to get all new accessories, or we can keep it the same, I think most people would have said keep it the same. And I do also think, I don't think there's anything internally to me that couldn't have fit in the 4.0. Like the battery gains, I don't think those, making this device smaller, I don't think that is what led to the battery gains. That just doesn't really add up to me. So I think it's very frustrating. And like I said, you have huge global athletes like Ronaldo putting out bands months, like maybe 3 or 4 months before you introduce a whole new device that makes all those bands obsolete. So it is interesting. And on a model where everybody's incentivized basically to upgrade, because you're saying the hardware is free based on the fact that you've paid a subscription for the software. So everyone's incentivized to upgrade. When I had the Apple Watch Series 4 and I bought it 6 or so years ago, I didn't have the same incentive to keep upgrading my watch every year. You know? But I think in the Whoop situation, it's different. So, I don't know. It's one of those things that is, yeah, I think once you break your promise in that way, and like I said, I feel like it's happened twice because the founding members, which I am not one of, already kind of got screwed. And now, each new .0, it seems like there's a new controversy. And it's just interesting. There has been some changes, though. Like I said, they did go and refund some of the folks who were unjustly charged when they had 12 months of subscription on there still. So, I don't know. But once you breach the trust, it's tough to gain it back. It is. And I think they've changed some things, too. Like, if in the more recent update, there was a part in which if you weren't on the Life tier, which is the most expensive tier, you could see features, but they were blurred out and they said Life by them. Now I've seen that they've given you the ability to remove that. If you don't want to go to Life, you don't have to. It's kind of like they blurred out the features, so you feel like you're getting FOMO a little bit. You're missing out on some things, but you're also not gonna get those. So it was a weird thing. I seen it in my app for a few days until my MG got there. But yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit interesting in that way that yeah, I think there's been a lot of trust lost, and it's rough. I imagine that there are some internal meetings at Whoop that took place in the last couple of weeks that probably weren't good. So I don't know. I've been putting out a lot of videos on the Whoop. I didn't mention anything about the controversy during the unboxing, but just wanted to get a video out, kind of going through some of the things on the Whoop side that have absolutely rubbed me the wrong way. I think you made a commitment, stand on business. The excuse for moving over to that subscription model was, oh, now we can innovate at a faster pace and you don't have to worry about the latest and greatest hardware because we're always going to send you that as long as you maintain the subscription. But yeah, they went back on that immediately and then tried to erase things from the internet when the internet never forgets. So I don't know. And I'm frustrated. Like I said, I had a bunch of bands that are just like 3.0. You get bands and yeah, I don't know. I feel like with how much backlash they're receiving, it's probably even more pressure right now to continue to innovate. So who knows if it doesn't take 2 years for the next .0 release of hardware, and then all the bands are once again obsolete. So I don't know. It de-incentivizes my want to get more bands, I'll tell you that. And also, like I said, Whoop's always changing. They used to have this other subscription tier that was called Whoop Pro, where it costs, I want to say, $244 a year, but you would get a certain, like a free accessory every quarter. So you got 4 accessories a year and some exclusive, I want to say, like colorways of bands and things of that nature. And then also they added the ability to like test and beta test some of the software more frequently, I guess. Oh, you know what? Another big one that Whoop added, the strength trainer, which is something. They were more cardio focused previously, and they added the strength trainer, which is supposed to take into effect like the strength training and some of the muscular load. I actually was in a beta test for that, and I provided a crazy amount of feedback on it based on what I was seeing, and was even supposed to meet with someone who was working on the feature at Whoop via like a video conference, which fell through. But a lot of the things that I told them is still not in the strength trainer. So, and I've heard that the heart rate tracking and some of the tracking with the strength trainer also doesn't work that well. I don't utilize the strength trainer that much. I'm going to start to now, as that also is feeding into the health span metric. But yeah, I think when some of the features aren't tracking very well, and you keep adding more features that feed into other features, then it just carries on in a negative way. So yeah, I don't know. I think Whoop is in some times that are darker than they're used to, and members are not happy in a lot of ways. So just thought I'd get this video out. It's a long one. Hopefully, then this is with me structuring it a little bit via typing some stuff up prior to. So yeah, let me know. Do you guys like these videos? And let me know in the comments what else you want to see. I'll say like final thoughts. Should you still buy it? I think I don't know. I think Whoop has put me in a tough position as far as a recommendation. I think 5.0, if you're not in the Whoop ecosystem already, I don't know. I'm sticking with Whoop. I just am. I think I appreciate all the data points. I appreciate the positive changes to my lifestyle I've made based on some of those things. I believe in the company. I don't mind being a beta tester for a lot of these features. I actually appreciate the ability to participate in these studies. I'm going to be participating in the advancing of the blood pressure insight study. I think it starts on June 9th. But, I'm all in. But I do think that all these incidents, the importance of transparency and the consistency and how the company speaks needs to be better, absolutely better. And I think when you're a company like Whoop that's relying on subscription-based loyalty, you can't continue to make these mistakes. I believe Will is a brilliant guy, Will Ahmed, and I think he understands obviously more about Whoop than I ever would, but I think he's, for lack of a better word, man, he has to lead this thing into a better direction moving forward, because the long-term repercussions of some of these things, I think they're severe. But yeah, I think Whoop is not evil, but right now there are a lot more flaws than they are used to showing, I think. And it's a flawed thing, but I think they are trying to integrate coaching and tracking into a tracker in a way that is unique still. I think their app is one of the better fitness apps out there, and they do continue to add features over time. The AI ones I'm still on the fence about a lot of those, and how they're able to be incorporated, but I think they're at the forefront of a lot of things. They do a lot of studying. They have a lot of smart people on their boards, and I think they'll get it right. It's just some of the messaging is a little conflicting. I think I'm going to continue to use Whoop. I like it, and I like to be on that cutting edge. And I mean, it's a question to ask yourself. What kind of data do you actually need, and who should be in control of that? And do you trust a company that has done some shady things? But like I said, if you appreciate this content and